This is the Andy Pollin Hour on Washington's new home for sports. ESPN 630, the sports capital.
And for the next few days, couple of hours. Tony's off until Tuesday, so you got a 2-hour show today, 2-hour show tomorrow, and a 2-hour show on Monday. And a lot to talk about today. Boy, once training camps start in the NFL, the long summer drought ends because there's just so much to talk about. Not just with the local football team, but the rest of the NFL. We'll hear from the reporter who covers the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for the Tampa Bay Times about the future of Tom Brady, who, by the way, is turning 45 next week. How do I know that? Because he has the same birthday as mine, and I am exactly 19 years older than Tom Brady. You do the math. I guess this is breaking news. This came out last night, and we don't know what's happening now because this deposition is being done privately. This isn't like Roger Goodell when he testified before the House Oversight Committee last month, where it was streamed, and I guess it was broadcast live on maybe some television. Certainly it was streamed, and I remember watching it, and this will not be streamed live. It started 2 hours ago, so who knows if they're done or not. But finally, they did get Dan Snyder to testify, but the key word here is voluntarily. So I'm sure you know the difference by now. If he's subpoenaed, he's got to answer questions under oath. If he does it voluntarily, he doesn't have to answer all the questions. This is the House Oversight Committee looking into the toxic workplace culture in which the organization has been already fined $10 million for that. And Snyder has denied, and has seemingly tried to avoid getting subpoenaed by sailing. He just has been staying on his yacht, and now he's in Israel. And here's another issue. Even if he were on land in Israel, that he cannot be served with a subpoena internationally. This is U.S. It says here in a story from John Keim, U.S. Marshals serve subpoenas on behalf of the committee in the United States, but according to a spokesperson, the Marshal Service has no authority to serve a congressional subpoena internationally. So you remember a couple of weeks ago, Snyder and his attorney said, okay, we're ready to do what you asked us to do last month. We were just too tied up. But now, July 28th, we can testify before the committee, and we'll do it voluntarily, just like you asked us. They said, no, we want to issue a subpoena for you. And Snyder's attorney says, no, there's no need for a subpoena. No, we're just going to do what we were asked to do back in June, and we're going to show up by Zoom, and we will testify that way. What they're afraid of is that he's going to hide behind the non-disclosure agreements that he signed with the employees who have had complaints about what happened. That's what led to this whole investigation and so forth, and what they talked to about the Washington Post. And they're saying, we will waive those non-disclosure agreements. But Snyder is more than likely to say, I'm not permitted to answer the question because there's an NDA. And he can claim that unless there is a subpoena on that. And if there is a subpoena, then the NDAs don't hold up. Now, this was a statement that was released by the committee chaired by Carolyn Maloney. And she said that Snyder has committed to providing full and complete testimony and to answer the committee's questions about his knowledge and of contributions to the commander's toxic workplace environment, as well as his efforts to interfere with the NFL's internal investigation without hiding behind non-disclosure or other confidentiality agreements. He's going to have his attorney sitting right next to him as he delivers this deposition, or while he's doing it now, or it's over, whatever. It started at 8 o'clock this morning. So he could also, and I don't know whether he'd do this, but theoretically he could lie, and he's not under oath. He's just doing this voluntarily. So I don't have great hope for this. There is going to be no tape of this, no broadcast of this, but the committee can release the transcript of it, and it seems quite possible that's going to happen. But that's the latest on that, and we will see what we get off of that. Again, I don't think there's anything groundbreaking that's going to come out of this. I don't think there's going to be an aha moment from this testimony, but it's good that at least he's talking. That's a step forward. What everybody who's a fan of this organization wants to happen is that there is a gotcha and he's forced to sell. But it seems like it's a long way from from that happening, if it's going to happen at all. And I'm just, as you look around and you see the various stories about Snyder, I just pulled this up from Roger Sherman, who writes for The Ringer. And big, long story about how bad Snyder is for the organization, how bad he is for the league. But when he reads it into the record, or when he puts it all down and you look at it, you just shake your head and you go, wow, all of this has happened over a relatively short period of ownership. I mean, he bought the team in 1999. Yes, it's 23 years. But still, just every step of the way, it's just one disgusting thing after another. So let me just read you this paragraph that Sherman writes about Snyder. He's also cheap and has a tendency to hold on to other people's money. He has reportedly withheld money from Washington's minority owners, concealed revenues that were owed to the NFL as part of a revenue-sharing agreement, and held back millions in refundable deposits he was supposed to return to season ticket holders. All of this while seeking to squeeze every last penny from his team's fans. He took the unusual step of charging fans to attend training camp, once forced them to pay for parking by banning pedestrian access to the stadium, and used to sue season ticket holders who could no longer afford to honor their contracts. The franchise has charged fans sky-high prices on everything from tickets to beer to watch their awful team in a decrepit stadium. Last year, a railing collapsed, nearly causing Eagles quarterback Jalen Hurts to be crushed under a sea of fans, and a pipe burst causing fans to be drenched in something that may have been sewage. The team claims it was rainwater, even though it was a perfectly sunny day. Washington perhaps literally pissed on its fans and then told them it was raining. The shoddiness of the stadium extends to the turf field, which has been widely criticized, including by the team's own players. The gross grass has been the site of multiple leg injuries, including the gruesome and career-altering ACL tear to Washington's most exciting player of the Snyder era, quarterback Robert Griffin III. I don't know about that for sure, because I think the knee was ready to go because of the Haloti Ngata hit several weeks earlier when they were playing Baltimore. So, yeah, the turf was bad, and it probably didn't help, but the whole ACL injury is not necessarily to blame on that turf. That was because, he didn't know how to slide, and he's running across the field, and Haloti Ngata, who's like 340, just slammed into him. His knee went one way, and he went the other, and he insisted that he had to come back and play. From what I was told, it was a minimum 4-week injury, but he found his way back on the field because he was so insecure about Kirk Cousins playing that he didn't want to lose his job. And Cousins had won a game while Griffin was out, and he couldn't have any more of that. So he came back and he played. And, they got into the playoffs really on Alfred Morris. Morris in that game-clinching, or that playoff-clinching game where they played Dallas in the final game of the season, he had 200 yards. Griffin really couldn't move too well, and without that performance by Alfred Morris, they would not have been in the playoffs that year. All right, I'm going to get to Patrick Corbin in just a bit. He is this says it all. He's the worst starting pitcher in baseball, and that's not opinion. That's fact based on numbers, and I'll get to that shortly. He did not get out of the first inning yesterday in Los Angeles. He gave up 6 runs on 45 pitches, 1 walk, recorded only 2 outs, and they pulled him out of the game. And he is due, he's making $23 million this year, and over the next 2 years is due $60 million. Never mind Steven Strasburg, who is going to be paid $140 million over the next 4 years and probably won't pitch again. So there's that. But I'll get to all of that. This is what really rankles me. And if you're tired of me ranting about Joe Jacoby not being in the Hall of Fame, I apologize for that. But I'm passionate about this, not just because I know him, because I worked with him for 10 years, like him very much, like his family, but because of what I saw in his career. He had a Hall of Fame career. Joe Jacoby was the most important part of a unit, or was, let's put it this way, his unit was the most important part of the 3 Super Bowl championships, because they were won with 3 different quarterbacks, none of whom are going to the Hall of Fame nor should be in the Hall of Fame, 3 different running backs, but the offensive line remained the same. Bostic, Jacoby, Grimm, they were a part of all 3 of the Super Bowl championships. There were a couple of parts that moved in and out. Jim Lachey was the best lineman on their last Super Bowl team. They had George Stark on the first one. I mean, there were some changes that were made, but those 3 stayed the same. Bostic only made 1 Pro Bowl. I don't think he's a Hall of Famer. Russ Grimm is in, and Joe Jacoby should be in, and Bostic told me that Jacoby should have gone in before Grimm. Okay? So, he's passed over by the regular committee, whatever that is, a bunch of writers, and I think they have a couple of broadcasters on it now, and his window to get in passed. You have to wait 5 years after you retire, and then it's a 25-year window to be elected by the standard committee. And that passed, although he was a finalist twice, and he had to go through that ridiculous dog and pony show where he would have to wait in his hotel room to see if he got a knock on the door with his family there. Just complete humiliation and embarrassment, and he didn't get it either time. So he moves on to the Seniors Committee. And I was told by John Clayton, who was a longtime voter for the Hall of Fame, sadly passed away several months ago, but was told after Jake's eligibility ended that he was certain that the Seniors Committee was going to put him in because he had talked to people there, and they told him that was going to be the case. So he was part of a group, I think it was about 24, that was going to be narrowed down to 12 for the finalists. And I think in another couple of weeks, we're going to find out, right before the Hall of Fame game, we're going to find out who are the 3 that get in. So it's down to 12. There will be 3 from the Seniors Committee. They expanded it from 1 to 3 from the Seniors Committee this year to get in. So his chances tripled, but he did not make the final 12. Which is just mind-blowing. It's just mind-blowing to me. 4-time Pro Bowler, 2-time All-Pro, part of maybe the most famous offensive line in history, the cornerstone of 3 Super Bowl championship teams, 4 Super Bowl teams. He doesn't make it. Now, I'm going to go through the 12 here and tell you what I think, whether or not they should be in and whether Joe Jacoby should go ahead of the ones that I'm going to say I don't think should go in, at least at this time. Now, the problem with the Hall of Fame is there's such a backlog. It didn't start until 1963. You have 53 players on each team, and so when you're only putting in 7 or 8 guys a year, I think you're overlooking some really important people, and they get lost in the sauce, which is what happened with Jake here. Now, Ken Anderson is going into this group of 12. He's in consideration for the Seniors Committee. He's a 4-time Pro Bowler, MVP of the league, 1981, led the league in passing twice. I would put Ken Anderson in. Maxie Baughan was a linebacker. He actually finished his career here in Washington, though he was too beat up to play. I think he only was activated for a couple of games, but he was a 9-time Pro Bowler with the Eagles and the Rams, part of the Ramskins that George Allen brought here in 1971. I would put him in. Randy Gradishar, Orange Crush defense with the Denver Broncos, only played 10 years. He was a Pro Bowl player 7 of those years, but made it to 1 Super Bowl, only 1, and they lost. They lost to the Dallas Cowboys. I would not put him in. Chuck Howley's the only player on a losing team to win the Super Bowl MVP. That was that wacky Super Bowl that they had against the Baltimore Colts. I think the vote had to be in early, and because Jim O'Brien kicked a field goal at the gun, I don't think the vote was counted properly. But he made the Pro Bowl 6 times, 5 first-team All-Pro selections. That's pretty serious stuff. Okay, so I'd put Chuck Howley in. Cecil Isbell. Now, I never saw him play. He finished his career in 1942, but he only played 5 years. 5 years. And he made the Pro Bowl 4 times. Cecil Isbell, I can't see it. Joe Klecko. No. Joe Klecko, very good. New York Sack Exchange. Never played in the Super Bowl. 4 Pro Bowl selections, 2 first-team All-Pro. Well, that's exactly what Jake had. No, I would not put him in. Bob Kuechenberg. Part of the undefeated Dolphins, 14 years playing with them, made the Pro Bowl 6 times. Okay, I might put him in. Eddie Metter, who I'm not real familiar with, played his entire career with the Rams, 59 to 70. Don't remember seeing him play, but he was named to the NFL's All-Decade Team of the 60s, as Jake was of the 80s. Jacoby was named All-Decade Team of the 80s. Not in. So I might put him in just for that. Tommy Novus was a great player on a bad team. Played his entire career in Atlanta, played 11 years, NFL Rookie of the Year, 5 Pro Bowls. I would put him in. Ken Riley? No. Ken Riley was very good. Played a long time with the Cincinnati Bengals. First-team All-Pro in his final year. Yeah, not for me. Sterling Sharpe. Sterling Sharpe had a short career. I'm sorry he was injured. Made 5 Pro Bowls, 3 first-team All-Pro, but he only played 7 years. I know that Gale Sayers got in after 5, but I don't think Sterling Sharpe was was the one who burst across the sky the way that Gale Sayers did. That's not the way I would look at it. So I don't know if I'd put him in. And then the last one played the exact same number of years as Joe Jacoby did, the same exact year period that he played, the same exact way to enter the NFL as an undrafted free agent, played from 1981 to 1993, made 3 first-team All-Pro teams with the Dallas Cowboys, 4 Pro Bowls, led the NFL in interceptions 3 times. But he played in 1 Super Bowl, and he played in that Super Bowl with the Giants after he had been cut from the Dallas Cowboys. Cut. So at least you look at this and you go, okay, 4 Pro Bowls, 3 first-team All-Pro. Okay, Jake only made first-team All-Pro twice. But to me, Everson Walls is not a Hall of Famer. And I'll tell you what most people know Everson Walls for? Getting burned by Dwight Clark for the catch. He was on billboards. He was on the cover of Sports Illustrated. Maybe not his fault. Clark made a great play. Montana made a great play. Understand all that. But I would not put Everson Walls in before Joe Jacoby. He was cut. The Cowboys cut him. And he wound up with the Giants and won a Super Bowl with them. And then was cut by the Giants. I think finished up his career in Cleveland. So, no, I would not put Everson Walls in at Jake. And I'm looking for explanation on this. Could be part of it that this organization is such a disgrace under Dan Snyder, even though Jake was long retired before Snyder bought the team, that maybe he tinges this, anyone who is associated with the organization tinges him in a bad way. And that's so unfair. That's just absolutely unfair to Joe Jacoby. So I got a real issue with this. I really do. I think this is just disgraceful. So anyway, coming up, we'll get to what was said yesterday in camp as the Commanders opened up. A lot of the discussion, and rightly so, about Carson Wentz. Like, okay, team number 3 in 3 years. They have spent the all off season telling us how great it is to have a quarterback with this arm, and he's welcome here, and what happened in the past is the past. He's getting a fresh start. Let's see. We'll hear what Carson Wentz had to say about himself, and also one of the team leaders, Jonathan Allen, as well, as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Hour, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Hour on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
We roll till noon today. Tony taking a few days off. Got the Nationals yesterday. I was looking forward to this because, as you may know, I'm not one who stays up late, so I wasn't going to stay up for 10 o'clock starts in Los Angeles against the Dodgers, but they closed it out with an afternoon game yesterday, so 3 o'clock. Okay, great. I love the view of Dodger Stadium. I've been there. It's really a great place, even though it's, I think, the 3rd oldest ballpark in Major League Baseball behind Wrigley Field and Fenway Park, but it's still great, and the view is great there, and I thought, this would be great, afternoon game, Los Angeles. Corbin was horrendous. Patrick Corbin was terrible. He threw 45 pitches yesterday, recorded 2 outs, and was pulled after giving up 7 hits and a walk, 6 runs, all of them earned. Game over, really, at that point, especially the way the Nationals hit. And it's maddening, even though, this is a lost season. They're not going anywhere, and certainly they're going to trade Juan Soto. I was going to spend some time on that today, but I think I'll get into that a little bit more tomorrow. You know the basics of it, but the reality is he's going to be traded, and this actually ties to Corbin because Mike Rizzo, the general manager, did his weekly radio appearance yesterday, and he was asked, would you tie the Corbin contract into a trade? And he said no. He didn't. Wouldn't refer to Corbin, of course, but he said, we're not going to use that to unload a contract because that would lessen the value that we would get back in compensation. A month ago he's saying we're not going to trade Juan Soto, and now he says, of course, we're entertaining offers. So, and if you listen to most of the baseball experts like Jeff Passan and Kirchin and Buster Olney, they say, yeah, it's almost certainly going to happen, and a bunch of reasons for him. But back to Corbin. Corbin is now 4-14 on the season. His ERA is 6.49. His WHIP is 1.77. He is the worst. He is the worst among qualified pitchers. He is the worst starting pitcher in Major League Baseball, and it's not even close. Again, ERA 6.49. Closest to him in the stinkitude category of ERA, Hunter Green, 5.59. And Baltimore's Jordan Lyles is second worst in WHIP at 1.45 to Corbin's 1.77. He is the worst starting pitcher in Major League Baseball. But like the Ginsu knife, there's more. He's being paid $23.4 million this year. It's a backloaded contract that he signed in December of 2018, $140 million. So they not only owe him the rest of what's left on there, so what is it, $10 million at least this year. He's owed for next year $24.4 million, and his salary for 2024, guaranteed, $35.4 million. So he's owed roughly $70 million for a guy who can't pitch anymore. Now, he gave him one season, and, I'm one of those who says World Series makes up for a lot here. So the fact that they won the World Series in large part because of him, not just for what he did during the regular season, which he was very good, 14-7 with a 3.25 ERA, 238 strikeouts. He was great in the postseason, starting and relieving. He was tremendous. But comes 2020, he goes 2-7, 4.66 ERA, and 11 starts. Okay, 60-game schedule, everybody's timing is off. You throw that out the window. 2021, though, 9-16, 5.82 ERA, and it's getting worse, and it's getting worse and worse. So you not only have the rest of this season to throw him out there, but you got next year where he's going to be making 24.4. And then in 2024, 35.4. $35 million for a guy who may be remarkably worse than he is now. And he's terrible now. And that's not even to mention what they got with Steven Strasburg. Because his contract, and there are reports he's not going to pitch again this year. I'd be shocked if he comes back on the mound. He made one start. He's thrown 31.2 innings since he signed that $240 million contract. And he is owed... Oh, yeah. He's owed $140 million over the next 4 years. So if you take the $60 million that Corbin is due over the next 2 years, 2023 and 2024, and you throw in the 4 years that Strasburg has, and it's quite possible he doesn't pitch again, that's $200 million for a guy who either stinks or can't pitch. It's just maddening. And, I don't... Hindsight, as Steve Spurrier once said, is 50-50. You can't fault them for what they did. What they did at the time with Strasburg made sense, and I was all in favor of Bryce Harper not being re-signed, which freed up the money to give Corbin the $140 million, and I was in favor of that, and that worked out great. And so I can't fault them for either one, but it's an anvil around their neck, and it's crushing. It's absolutely... Would have made a difference if he didn't have those two guys in re-signing Juan Soto? Maybe. And the other thing is, if those guys were at the form that they were in 2019 this year, they'd be a better team, and maybe it would make sense to give Soto whatever he wants, and that way you would have Soto, two really good pitchers, and, maybe a couple of other parts that they could pick up at the trade deadline. But instead, they're going to unload Soto. They're probably going to unload Josh Bell. And they're stuck with Corbin, who as Rizzo says, they essentially can't trade him in any kind of deal for Juan Soto. It's just a mess. But, look, I'm still glad. I'm old enough to have perspective to know that we didn't have baseball here for 30 years. So I'm not going to be one to say, oh, God, why don't they just leave town, as I've seen on Twitter and Facebook, which is just ridiculous. It's great we have a baseball team, we have a good ballpark, and we have a World Series banner flying there. And I think if Mike Rizzo stays, and who knows what the new ownership is going to look like, they can get back to that. Things can pick up. All right, to Commanders training camp. And they had, we went through the story yesterday of the Chases sitting out, Chase Young and Chase Roulier, both on the the physically unable to perform list. So is Logan Thomas, the tight end, and the indication from Ron Rivera, who really never talks about injuries, but it sounds like they may get Thomas back relatively quickly. Same thing with Roulier, who didn't have a knee injury, had a broken leg, so he may be back, but Chase Young's going to be out for a while. The biggest story, though, is Carson Wentz. And they spent the whole offseason telling us, oh, don't look at what happened the last 2 years when Philadelphia and Indianapolis cut him. He's liked by his teammates. He's got great potential. He's got the pro arm that we're looking for, et cetera, et cetera. But the fact of the matter is, two organizations at great cost to them unloaded Carson Wentz. The Eagles, with a lot of dead cap money, traded him before last season to the Indianapolis Colts. The Indianapolis Colts had traded a first round and I think a third round to get him, and they also unloaded him for a pair of thirds and also took a cap hit. So there's that. And this was John Keim from ESPN talking to Wentz yesterday, getting to the question of, well, you know, you were a washout the last 2 years. What are you doing now to make sure that doesn't happen? He gives him kind of a cliched answer, but listen how and I think he's prepared for this all year long. He's prepared for these questions, and he seemed to be prepared for what John Keim asked yesterday. Just a second. Technical issue. Let's see here. Here we go.
Is it almost natural to lead to some sort of introspection about, well, is there something I can do better to make sure I don't put myself in that situation again? And if so, is there anything that you kind of looked at yourself in the offseason and say, well, I want to be better here going into this year? Anything at all?
Yeah, I mean, I think regardless if it's a good, bad, ugly game, year, whatever, I'm always that way. I'm always trying, how can I get better? How can I look at myself first? Where can I get better? Where can I help the team be better? All of those things. And so for me, it's just coming in and you know, distributing the ball to these guys and being efficient, being effective, being consistent, both physically with my play and also just with my attitude, with my leadership, trying to be consistent with that. And so those are things I look at every single year. And then there's always a couple things here and there mechanically that you're trying to focus on, or you know, fundamentally that most people would probably never understand or really recognize. But you're always focusing on a couple things in the off seasons to try and get better.
So he danced around, you know, like Keim is saying, you know, he couldn't say it this way, but the gist of the question is, you know, it was a disaster the last 2 years for you, especially the way it ended in Philadelphia and Indianapolis. What are you doing this year to make sure that doesn't happen? And he talks about, you know, I try to focus on this and I focus on that. He's ready for these, but that's the key question. Just like we say on Passover, why is this night different than all other nights? Why is this year different than the last two? That's the key. This is the question about what Ron Rivera was asked yesterday or 2 days ago at his news conference about the conversation with Wentz to assure him that he would be wanted.
For anybody, it just builds confidence. It builds confidence within myself. You know, I always think I'm a confident person, but hearing it from somebody else, from the head coach, those types of things, definitely just instills that confidence even more to just go out there and don't put pressure, don't put expectations, just play free, have fun and play free and be you. And just that reminder always from him means a lot, so I can just go out there, play loose, play fast, play free, and have fun. Well,
playing fast, playing loose, and playing free has led to a lot of costly interceptions. That's part of the problem here with Carson Wentz. He's trying to thread the needle all the time, doesn't take the safe play, and you can do that if you're Brett Favre. Hasn't worked so well for Carson Wentz. So, you know, this vote of confidence, what else are they going to do? I mean, they got the only quarterback that they could really get. Carson Wentz was going to be cut by the Colts, and if he wasn't going to sign here. So they got the one guy that they could get. They probably, if they waited, they could have gotten Jimmy Garoppolo, but they needed something to boost the organization. So, you know, playing loose, playing free, yada, yada, yada. Well, I don't know what that's ultimately going to mean, but I understand what Ron Rivera has to do to instill confidence in him. This is the question, the key question. What about this? This is 3 teams in 3 years for you. listen to him as he he tries to put lipstick on this pig.
It is unique. It's a unique business. You know, you're 1 year here, 1 year there, and you try to, you know, you have your sights set on long term wherever you are. But, you know, God has different plans sometimes, and try and make the most of it. Try and make the most of it and just keep plugging along. And I got an awesome wife and kids that, you know, they pick up, and here we are, you know, and we're going to fully invest in this city and this team and the people around us, and try and make the most of it for, God willing, hopefully a long time. And yeah, it definitely brings about some different life circumstances that I think a lot of people don't understand within a family dynamic, but it's also fun. It's also fun. It's part of the adventure for my family and I, and we're loving it.
No, yeah, come on. It's fun. It's not fun for two football teams who thought you were the future, the Philadelphia Eagles and the Indianapolis Colts, and it won't be fun here if they tell you to move on after this year. Remember, this is 1 year left on his contract. It's guaranteed. It's $28 million, but they won't owe him a dime if they cut him at the end of the season. So, you know, fun is an interesting way of putting it. I don't know how much fun it is, and you know, I don't know how much fun it is when he comes home and he tells his wife, yeah, we're going to have to pack up and move again because the team that thought I was the quarterback of the future has decided that I'm not the quarterback of the future anymore, and it was only 1 year in Indianapolis. Fun. This is Jonathan Allen, team leader, and his demeanor at these news conferences, seemingly win or lose. You know, he's got a very serious way. I've never seen him really joking around at these things. He's a very focused kind of guy. So the Wentz question was asked of him yesterday.
There's been obviously a lot of attention around him the last couple of years, a couple trades and all that. When someone like that comes in, what questions do you have, and what have you seen from him since he's been here?
I really don't need to ask him any questions. What he does on a day-to-day basis will tell me everything I need to know about him. He came in, he worked, he involved himself with the team, and he's exactly what we want from a quarterback. So I have no questions. I know a lot of the times the media doesn't really get the full story, only the story that some people portray. So I'm not worried about what the media says. I'm worried about what I see with my own eyes, and he's giving me no reason to doubt him at all. So
that's the team motto, I guess, or the team line on Carson Wentz. Yeah, everything's great. So we'll see what happens. It's way early to go either way. It's way early to say, oh, this is going to be a disaster, and it's way early to say this is going to work out great. But they have done everything they can as an organization, especially the comments over and over and over from Ron Rivera about how well he fits in and how likable he is and how much his teammates respond to him and so forth and so on. So we'll see where that goes, but right now, it's looking all happy in Ashburn. And Bram will have a lot more on this coming up on his show, of course, and at 5:30, he's got Commanders Daily, which you hear every day here on ESPN 630. One other baseball story here. I was without the Nats last night. I tuned over to watch the Mets and the Yankees and watch Max Scherzer pitch. And I put this out on Twitter as well. He was great last night. I didn't get the decision because the Mets had a walk-off win, but he threw 7 shutout innings. He struck out 6, walked only 2, and he was vintage Max. And I watched him strike out Aaron Judge, which is, you know, that's Hall of Famer versus likely Hall of Famer. And it's just great. I mean, that's about as good as you get. The big slugger facing the Hall of Fame pitcher who's, you know, knows the game inside and out, team leader, 38, and gives you everything he's got every time he goes out there. It was just great to watch that. And I had a tinge of, once here in Washington, let it not be forgot that once there was Camelot. And there was Camelot watching Max Scherzer pitch. I mean, there was a period of time where he was taking no-hitters into the 6th and 7th inning almost every time he went out and pitched. And he threw 2 no-hitters in a Nationals uniform in a year that they didn't make the playoffs. But he was great here. And when he was at his best, there was nothing better than watching Max Scherzer pitch. And it still is great to watch him, though he's pitching for a team other than the Nationals. Anyway, last night he used the new technology, the PitchCom, which is a communication device between catcher and pitcher so they don't have to use signs. And it came in this year for the first year, regular season, and here we are more than halfway through the season. Scherzer used it for the first time last night, and obviously he pitched very well, the 7 shutout innings. And he was asked about it after the game. He said, it works. He says, does it help? Yes, but I also think it should be illegal. I don't think it should be in the game. The fact we're talking about this, we're taking this out of the game, meaning the signs and so forth, and we're just putting in technology. Now you can't steal signs on second. The pitcher can't have the advantage of having a complex system. It's part of baseball trying to crack someone's signs. Does it have its desired intent that it cleans up the game a little bit? Yes, but I also feel like it takes away part of the game. I'll continue to think about using it, though. So, He's old school, and he's saying to himself, I've been pitching all these years without doing this, and now it's here, and it didn't bother me, obviously, when I was pitching, but, it's not the game that I grew up with. Sign stealing has always been part of the game, and it's not really that now. So, I don't know. I kind of I understand where Max is coming from. I just like to see him pitch. And, I was talking to my daughter and my son-in-law. They just had a baby, my first grandchild, Eliza. They're thrilled. I'm thrilled. But I said, when Max Scherzer makes the Hall of Fame, we're going to go to Cooperstown with Eliza, meaning that she's going to be well old enough to go because Scherzer's, I think, going to pitch maybe even 5 more years. I mean, at 38, making $43 million a year, he's worth it. And when that contract is up, the 3-year deal, what would it be, 40, 41 maybe? Somebody's liable to give him another contract. He's liable to get another deal. He's going to be pitching for a while, I think. So, just to see him out there still getting it done and getting it done in a big way is pretty incredible. Coming up, we're going to get to a couple things, including the forecast for Tom Brady, who's going to be 45 on the same day that I am exactly 19 years older. And Rick Stroud, who covers the team, talked to Rich Eisen about that yesterday. We'll get into that a little bit and some other notes as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Hour, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Hour on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Couple hours today, a couple hours tomorrow, a couple hours Monday, with Tony taking a few days off. In the next hour, actually, we'll hear from Tony and Mike as they talked about Shohei Ohtani possibly being traded to the New York Mets. I take this with a grain of salt, this report. It's Jim Bowden, the disastrous Nationals former GM, who's now allegedly a reporter with the National, and he does some other report. Athletic. Why did I say National? National went out of business over 30 years ago. The Athletic. He works for them. So anyway, he's got a report that Shohei Ohtani, the Mets have reached out to the Angels about a deal, and they'll have their thoughts. I'll have mine about that coming up in the next hour. Tom Brady. Tom Brady is underway in Tampa. All 32 teams have their training camps going, and he is going to turn 45 next Wednesday. Less than a week, he will be 45 years old. And there has never been anything like this. Never been a quarterback, certainly north of 40, maybe even north of 35, where people wonder, well, where's he going to go next? What's the next step on the playing field for Tom Brady? And if he doesn't, why, he's got $37.5 million a year waiting for him to step right in the broadcast booth at Fox. Man, it must be great to be Tom Brady. But he still wants to play football, and he's still playing it at a very high level. And so the question is this going to be the last year of football for Tom Brady? Is this going to be the last year in Tampa Bay for Tom Brady? And might there be yet another chapter in maybe the most remarkable career in the history of sports? There's been nothing like this before, nothing close to it. Yes, Gordie Howe played hockey until he was 51 years old, but not like this. Not at the level that Tom Brady is playing football. So Rick Stroud covers the team for the Tampa Bay Times, and he was on yesterday with Rich Eisen, and the question about Brady and Tampa, this is year number 3 for him. Is this going to be it?
I do think it's his final year here because he had an opportunity. If he wanted to, he could have said, hey, let's extend this. Certainly he's, pushed money down the line in terms of, salary cap reasons and things like that, voidable years, all that language that I don't understand. But I do think that, he wants to be a free agent. Now, what does that mean to a 45, soon to be 46-year-old Tom Brady? I'm not sure. I do know when he enters the off season this year, and I don't know if it's going to end up with confetti or condolences. I really don't know. But however it ends up, he's going to have somewhere to go. And what that means is $37.5 million a year waiting for him at Fox. So that's different than what he entered this offseason with, right, where it was just the big unknown. I think he looked around. He had some opportunity. I still believe that the Miami thing was viable. Somehow Sean Payton was a consideration down there. It didn't work out. He wanted to still play. He scrambled back. He got all his guys back because he signed on the eve, announced his return on the eve of free agency. So he's got a Super Bowl ready team. And after this year, I don't know, because the great ones never know when to put the keys on the table. But all I know is the guys can still swing. I was watching him today. It's unbelievable what he can do at 45. And of course, for a first practice, it was very sharp. He was sharp. I don't know how long it goes, but it's a hell of a ride to watch. And I do think though that this is probably his last year, and he'll want to have his options open the way he did his final year in New England. He'll like to look around. If he's going to play, he can play anywhere. That'll have him, and if he's not, he's got a broadcasting job.
Yeah, and I would say to Tom Brady, I mean, he knows this, of course, that you keep playing. You play as long as you can possibly play, because once you leave, although he has left and has come back, I don't think if he leaves again, he can come back. But you know what the interesting thing is going to be? Gronk. I've heard Mike Tannenbaum say this right here on ESPN 630, that he believes Gronk will be back by Halloween, that he'll miss the game, that maybe Tampa will have some injuries, or Brady will give him a call and say, come on, let's go. Let's one more run. Or is it possible that Gronk gets another rest year like he had a couple of years ago, and he comes back with Brady wherever that might be? Maybe it's Miami next year, or maybe someplace else. Miami seems to be the destination. And if Tua Tagovailoa doesn't take a huge step up this year, it seems like Stephen Ross, the owner, is going to do everything he can to get Tom Brady with the Miami Dolphins. So think about this. Think about the Ulta Cockers, and Brady is really, even in comparison to Gronk and Ulta Cocker, that those two team up maybe this year for one more year in Tampa, or the possibility that they go to Miami. I mean, people who are middle-aged and older like to retire to Miami. So, Brady is middle-aged. He's not quite elderly yet, but in football terms, he's elderly. He's ancient. He's a fossil. But he's still getting it done. And it's just amazing that teams are salivating as to where he will go at the age of 46 to play football after one more year in Tampa. It's just absolutely remarkable. Got a couple of sons of basketball stories. One son of Mike Krzyzewski, one son of LeBron James. First, the Krzyzewski, actually grandson of Krzyzewski. His name is Michael Savarino. And as you know, he was a walk-on player at Duke. I think he eventually landed a scholarship, but he was deep on the bench for them. And he was arrested in November, right as the season was starting, at a traffic stop while he was riding with the best player on the team, Paolo Banchero. Now, there are some who believe that Banchero was driving the car, and when it got pulled over or whatever, they made a quick changeover, or the cop was granting him that. Whatever had happened, ultimately Savarino was charged with driving while impaired after this traffic stop. And as they do at Duke, boy, they covered this up quickly. There's going to be no announcement about this. Savarino was away from the team for a while. Then he showed up on the bench again. Nobody said anything about it, and they got through the season. And, they had their great run in the NCAA tournament to the Final Four, but they did not win the national championship, and Savarino, with his grandfather retiring, decided he really wants to play a little basketball, not ride the bench, so he's going to play at NYU next season, where I assume he'll be good enough to get a lot of minutes. Banchero, number one pick by the Magic in the draft, he is still facing charges of aiding and abetting DWI, and that's reportedly still pending. His court appearance was scheduled for today. We'll find out what happens there. But Savarino pleaded guilty to driving while impaired, and as part of the plea agreement, charges related to drinking under the age of 21 and running a stop sign were reportedly dismissed. Boy, oh boy. especially running a stop sign with alcohol in your system, because he blew a .8. It was at the legal limit, and those were dismissed. He paid $300 in court costs and fines, did 24 hours of community service, and will be on unsupervised probation for 6 months. So a very, very light handling of Michael Severino, is it Severino? Yeah, Severino, who you might expect, I guess, you would get in that part of the country where granddad is a legend. So understand that. Then I came across a story in SI about Bronny James, and Bronny James is going into his senior year of high school, and you've heard LeBron James say that he would like to play with his son. Now, at the moment, that means it's 2 years away. But that could change, because Adam Silver, the commissioner, said at the Board of Governors he's optimistic that they could lower the age from 19 to 18 to get into the NBA, and it could happen in the next collective bargaining cycle, which would happen over the next year. So theoretically, by the time Bronny James finishes his senior year of high school, he will have the option of going directly to the NBA. And as his dad did many years ago, when he was clearly ready for that, and burst on the scene and is now in the discussion as the greatest player of all time. This was the class of 2003, so now it would be 20 years later when Bronny would come out. The question is he a high school to NBA talent? So Sports Illustrated polled 8 Power 5 head or assistant coaches who are watching him play this summer league game that they went to. And by the way, he's like Elvis at these summer league games. Everybody's lining up. When they find out he's on one court and it doesn't hold enough people, they move him to another court. The attention on him is huge. And some of the coaches who were sitting courtside for this game that they went to, John Shire of Duke, Penny Hardaway of Memphis, and Alabama's Nate Oates, they were all there to see him play. And they asked those coaches and other coaches if they knew of anyone recruiting him, and no one committed to doing that. No, we're just watching. We don't know. They asked an SEC assistant coach, is he going to play college basketball at all? He says, I don't know. He says, I've heard everything from that he might just work out and post clips for a year, hoping to go the pro route. Who knows? At the moment, again, he has to sit out. Here's the question, though. Is he good enough to go to the NBA? And this is what a Big Ten assistant coach told him. He could be a really good college point guard. He's got a ways to go before we start talking about pros just as a prospect. But his last name is his last name. It's the curse, but for what he wants to do, it could also be the gift. And also with the way star players are able to move from team to team, it could be that Bronny James is drafted by a team in the first round who wants to get LeBron in. And LeBron at age, what would be 39, I guess. Next year he's 38 now, or is he 37? Be late 30s, at an age far past, what you're supposed to be that good, be as good as he is. But again, we just finished talking about Tom Brady, so who knows? That you get him in, and he puts your team on the map, not just for talent, but for attention. That people start to notice what your team is. So that could be a big consideration, and you got to feel a little bit for Bronny James that he's got a bullseye on him, and wherever he goes, people are looking at him. There have been others. Look, we just happened. This is kind of ironic because this just happened this past weekend. Ripken's son, Cal Ripken's son. Ryan Ripken, who I think is named for Nolan Ryan, if I'm not mistaken. Ryan Ripken just retired from baseball. He'd been in the organizations of the Orioles and the Nationals, and his last name may have helped him to get looked at by those two teams, but he wasn't a major league talent. He's taller than his dad. I think he's about 6'6". Cal goes about 6'4". At one point, they were talking about him playing college basketball, but he tried baseball, and he decided to give it up. But you got to think that everywhere he went, that's Cal Ripken's kid. Sometimes it works the other way. Ken Griffey Jr. was a better player than Ken Griffey. Barry Bonds was a better player than Bobby Bonds. But those were not Hall of Fame players. LeBron is in the discussion as the best ever. Cal is not in the discussion as the best ever to play shortstop, but he was outstanding and set a record which I can't imagine ever being broken, but who knows down the road. But to play as many games as he did consecutively and to be an all-star year after year after year and a Hall of Famer, he certainly is in the discussion among the greatest players who ever played the game. Bronny James, this is going to be one to watch, and the pressure on him is going to be enormous. And if his dad goes to play with him, what's that going to be like, and what's he going to do to try to alleviate some of that pressure? It's going to be one to watch, and it's an interesting read if you get to it at SI.com about how the attention is so much on Bronny James right now and how he's dealing with that. Coming up, more on the Commanders. Also, should the Angels trade Shohei Ohtani, and if he goes to the Mets, what then? We'll talk about that and more as we continue with the Tony Kornheiser Show next, ESPN 630.